There are few people in modern entertainment who have reinvented themselves as many times as Cher. For more than 6 decades, the world has watched her transform from a shy young girl with big dreams into one of the most recognizable women in music, film, and popular culture. She became a chart-topping singer, an Academy Award-winning actress, a television icon, and a performer whose career outlasted generations of changing tastes. But behind the dazzling costumes, sold-out arenas, and unmistakable voice was a woman whose personal life often unfolded under an unforgiving spotlight. The public knew the headlines, the marriages, the romances, the breakups, the famous men. Yet as Cher reflected on her life in later interviews, there were moments when her words carried a quiet sadness, an acknowledgement that success had never guaranteed lasting love. And after decades of extraordinary relationships, there remained one man whose place in her heart seemed unlike anyone else's. To understand why, we have to begin at the very beginning. Cher was born Sherilyn Sarkeesian on May 20, 1946, in El Centro, California. Her childhood was far from glamorous. Her parents separated when she was still an infant, and financial struggles shaped much of her early life. Her mother, actress and model Georgia Holt, worked tirelessly to support the family, often moving from place to place in search of opportunities. Cher later spoke openly about feeling different as a child. She struggled in school, long before dyslexia was widely understood, and often believed she simply wasn't smart enough. Years later, she learned that many of those difficulties had another explanation, but during her childhood they left lasting emotional scars. Even then, she dreamed of becoming someone unforgettable. At 16, she left school and moved to Los Angeles, believing she could build a life through determination rather than convention. That decision changed everything. It was there that she met a struggling songwriter and producer named Sonny Bono. Sonny was 11 years older than Cher. At first, their relationship wasn't romantic. He offered her a place to stay, and before long they became close friends. Their shared passion for music slowly evolved into something deeper. By the mid-1960s, the pair had become Sonny and Cher, one of the most recognizable musical duos in America. I Got You Babe became an international phenomenon. Their matching outfits, playful chemistry, and unmistakable harmony made them cultural icons almost overnight. To audiences, they seemed inseparable. Their television shows reinforced that image. Sonny played the lovable straight man while Cher delivered perfectly timed jokes with her signature deadpan style. Millions watched every week, believing they were seeing a couple whose love was as effortless as their performances. But life behind the cameras was far more complicated. As Cher's confidence and popularity grew, so did the imbalance within the marriage. In later interviews and in her memoir Cher, the memoir, Part 1, she described Sonny as deeply controlling, managing not only their careers but many aspects of her personal life. She has said she eventually realized she had become dependent on him in ways she no longer wanted to be. Leaving wasn't easy. Professionally, Sonny had helped launch her career. Personally, he had been her closest companion for years. Walking away meant risking everything she had built. Their divorce in 1975 marked the end of one of entertainment's most famous partnerships. Fans were shocked. The couple who had seemed inseparable on television had quietly reached a point where staying together was no longer possible. Even after the divorce, Cher rarely denied Sonny's importance in her life. She acknowledged both the pain and the opportunities that came from their years together. Their relationship was complicated, filled with affection, conflict, gratitude, disappointment, and shared history. Time gradually softened some of the hardest feelings. When Sonny Bono died unexpectedly in a skiing accident in 1998, Cher delivered a heartfelt eulogy that surprised many people. Speaking publicly, she described him as unforgettable and credited him for believing in her when almost no one else did. It wasn't a declaration of romantic regret, but it was clear that the bond they had shared could never simply be erased. Life, however, kept moving forward. Only days after divorcing Sonny, Cher married rock musician Gregg Allman. The relationship began with intense passion but quickly became turbulent. Gregg struggled with substance addiction, something Cher has discussed openly over the years. Their marriage lasted only a few years, though they welcomed their son, Elijah Blue Allman. Looking back, Cher has often spoken with compassion rather than bitterness about Gregg, recognizing both his talent and the personal battles he faced. Love alone, she learned, could not solve every problem. In the years that followed, Cher's name became linked with some of the biggest celebrities of the era. She dated Gene Simmons of Kiss. Simmons has repeatedly spoken with admiration about Cher, calling her one of the smartest women he ever knew. Cher herself has remembered him warmly, describing him as funny, attentive, and genuinely kind. Their relationship ended not because of public scandal but because their lives moved in different directions. Then came actor Val Kilmer. Despite their age difference, the two developed a close connection that extended well beyond romance. Cher has spoken fondly about Kilmer for decades, recalling both his humor and his intelligence. Even after they separated, they remained friends, and Cher publicly supported him during his later health challenges, demonstrating that affection can survive even when romance does not. Another relationship that attracted enormous attention was with Tom Cruise. Years later, when asked about former partners during television interviews, Cher spoke positively about Cruise, even describing him as one of the great loves of her life during that period. Their romance was relatively brief, but she has consistently remembered it with warmth and respect. There were other chapters too. Musician Richie Sambora, baker and former actor Rob Camilletti, whose younger age generated endless media attention. Each relationship arrived during a different season of her life. Each offered something unique. Some brought excitement, some brought comfort. Others helped her rediscover herself after heartbreak. Over time, Cher became remarkably honest about the realities of love. She admitted that independence had become essential to her happiness. She often joked that she didn't need a man, but also acknowledged that wanting companionship was very different from needing it. From the outside, it appeared that she had experienced every kind of romance imaginable. Passionate beginnings, painful endings, unexpected friendships, lifelong respect. Yet those closest to her story have long noticed something else. Among all the famous names connected to Cher over the decades, there remained one man whose place in her heart seemed quietly different from everyone else's. And although she rarely tried to explain why, that unspoken difference would eventually become one of the most revealing chapters of her life. By the time Cher entered her 40s and 50s, she had already lived several lifetimes in the public eye. She had topped the music charts in multiple decades, conquered television, reinvented herself as a successful actress, and earned an Academy Award for Moonstruck. Every comeback seemed to prove that she possessed an extraordinary ability to survive change. Professionally, she appeared unstoppable. Personally, however, life was never as simple. One lesson seemed to repeat itself throughout the years. The greater her fame became, the harder it was to build a lasting relationship. Cher has spoken candidly in interviews about the unusual challenges that came with being one of the world's most recognizable women. Fame brought wealth, opportunity, and independence, but it also created barriers that few people could fully understand. Trust became more difficult. Privacy almost disappeared. Every romance became front-page news before it had a chance to grow naturally. She once explained that she had never been someone who wanted to surrender her independence simply to maintain a relationship. In various interviews over the years, she has remarked that men were never a necessity in her life. It was one of her most quoted observations, often summarized by her famous line that a man is not a necessity, but a luxury. The remark was witty, but beneath the humor was a philosophy she had developed through decades of experience. She had learned that love should add to a life, not define it. That outlook gave her strength, but it also came with a cost. As the years passed, Cher occasionally acknowledged that being fiercely independent could make lasting partnerships difficult. Relationships require compromise, and compromise was never easy for someone who had spent most of her adult life making her own decisions. There were moments when she admitted feeling lonely. Not because she lacked admirers, not because she lacked friends, but because genuine emotional connection becomes increasingly rare when nearly everyone already knows your public identity before meeting the real person behind it. Cher often approached these subjects with honesty instead of self-pity. She laughed about dating. She joked about relationships. She even teased herself during television appearances. Yet listeners could sometimes hear something quieter beneath the humor, a recognition that love had always been more complicated than outsiders imagined. Marriage, she gradually concluded, no longer seemed necessary. After 2 divorces, she stopped viewing marriage as the ultimate destination. In interviews, she explained that she simply wasn't sure it suited her life anymore. That didn't mean she had stopped believing in love. It meant she had stopped measuring love by whether it lasted forever. That distinction revealed how much she had changed. The young woman who once believed relationships could solve everything had become someone who understood that even profound love sometimes has limits. Looking back on her romances, Cher rarely spoke with bitterness. About Sonny Bono, she recognized both the opportunities he gave her and the control she eventually had to escape. About Gregg Allman, she acknowledged the heartbreaking reality of addiction and the pain it brought to their family. About Simmons, she remembered intelligence, generosity, and laughter. About Tom Cruise, she recalled youthful excitement and genuine affection. About Richie Sambora, she spoke respectfully, appreciating the friendship that remained after romance faded. About Camilletti, she often defended him against unfair media attention, insisting that people judged him without truly knowing him. There was a remarkable consistency in how Cher described her former partners. She rarely portrayed herself as a victim. Instead, she tended to remember what each person had contributed to her life. That ability to separate gratitude from heartbreak may be one of the reasons so many former partners continued speaking warmly about her long after their relationships ended. Yet as biographers, interviewers, and longtime fans revisited Cher's extraordinary life, one subtle pattern kept appearing. Whenever conversations turned toward the loves that had shaped her most deeply, there was often a pause. Sometimes it appeared in the way she answered, sometimes in what she chose not to say, sometimes in the emotion that briefly crossed her face before she redirected the conversation elsewhere. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was simply different. Unlike many celebrities, Cher has never spent her career publicly romanticizing her past. She rarely revisited old relationships simply to generate headlines. When she did speak about former partners, she usually focused on respect, friendship, or lessons learned. But one relationship seemed to exist in a separate emotional category. It wasn't necessarily the longest. It wasn't necessarily the easiest. Nor was it defined by public spectacle. Instead, it appeared to leave behind something far more lasting. Those closest to her story have often observed that this particular relationship seemed to influence the way Cher later understood love itself. It wasn't merely about romance. It was about timing, emotional safety, trust, and the feeling of being understood without needing to perform. Interestingly, Cher almost never over-explained it. She has always been remarkably open compared with many celebrities. Yet this chapter remains surprisingly private. She would occasionally mention the person involved, sometimes with obvious affection, sometimes with admiration, but rarely with lengthy detail. That silence became part of the mystery. Was it because the memories remained too personal? Was it because she preferred protecting something that had once been deeply meaningful? Or was it simply that some relationships cannot be fully explained, no matter how many years pass? The public has never received a complete answer. And perhaps that is exactly how Cher wanted it. Not every important love story fits neatly into a headline. Some relationships leave their deepest mark not through dramatic endings but through the quiet realization that they changed who you became. By the time Cher reached her 70s, she often reflected on life with remarkable clarity. She spoke about aging without fear, celebrated the independence she had fought so hard to achieve, and expressed gratitude for the extraordinary career she had built. Yet every now and then, when discussions turned toward love, there remained the unmistakable sense that one chapter still occupied a special place in her memories. Not because it was perfect, not because it ended happily, but because it represented something she never quite found again. Only years later would Cher quietly acknowledge a truth that longtime observers had suspected all along. There had been one man whose place in her heart was unlike anyone else's. But to understand why, we first have to understand the remarkable connection they shared. By the time Cher reached her 80s, she had spoken publicly about many chapters of her remarkable life. She had reflected on fame, family, motherhood, loss, and the extraordinary career that made her one of the most enduring entertainers in history. But whenever conversations turned to love, one name consistently carried a different emotional weight. That man was Val Kilmer. Unlike many of Cher's relationships, their story was never defined by tabloid drama or public spectacle. Instead, it became something quieter, more personal, and, in many ways, more enduring. Cher and Val Kilmer met in the early 1980s through mutual friends. At first glance, they seemed like an unlikely couple. She was already an international superstar in her mid-30s. Kilmer was a talented young actor just beginning the career that would later include films such as Top Gun, The Doors, Tombstone, and Batman Forever. There was also a noticeable age difference. Cher was more than a decade older than Kilmer, something that attracted plenty of media attention at the time. Neither of them seemed to care. Years later, Cher admitted that what first drew her to Kilmer wasn't his appearance or his growing fame. It was his intelligence, curiosity, and sense of humor. In interviews, she described him as brilliant, endlessly interesting, and unlike anyone she had known before. Their relationship quickly developed into something deeper than a typical Hollywood romance. They challenged one another intellectually. They laughed together. They supported one another's ambitions. Most importantly, they became genuine friends. That friendship would prove stronger than romance itself. Like many relationships, theirs eventually came to an end. Cher has never offered one dramatic explanation for why they separated, and neither has Kilmer. Publicly, they both suggested that life simply pulled them in different directions as their careers demanded more of their time. What stands out is not the breakup. It's what happened afterward. Unlike so many celebrity romances that end in silence or resentment, Cher and Kilmer remained close for decades. They stayed in contact. They spoke warmly about each other in interviews. Neither appeared interested in rewriting history or minimizing what they had shared. Instead, they seemed grateful that love had evolved into lasting friendship. That became especially meaningful many years later. In 2014, Val Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer. Although he was initially reluctant to discuss his health publicly, he later revealed the diagnosis and the treatments that permanently affected his speaking voice. Throughout those difficult years, Cher remained one of the people who stood beside him. In interviews, she shared that Kilmer had stayed in her guest house while recovering. She spoke with deep affection about caring for him during parts of his illness, explaining that even after all those years, they had remained part of each other's lives. She never presented herself as a hero. Instead, she spoke as someone helping a person she genuinely loved. In one interview, Cher affectionately referred to him as hysterical and praised his creativity, intelligence, and courage. She emphasized that he was one of the few people who could make her laugh endlessly while also surprising her with the depth of his thinking. Those comments were revealing. They weren't nostalgic attempts to recreate an old romance. They reflected enduring admiration. When Val Kilmer died on April 1, 2025, from pneumonia following years of health complications related to his cancer treatment, Cher joined countless friends and colleagues in remembering him. Her public tribute was brief but heartfelt. She called him funny, brave, brilliant, and a great friend. There was no dramatic declaration, no sensational confession, just genuine affection from someone who had known him far beyond the Hollywood spotlight. So why do so many people believe Val Kilmer was the one man Cher never fully let go? The answer lies not in a single interview or headline, but in the remarkable consistency of what she said about him over 4 decades. She spoke warmly about other former partners. She respected Sonny Bono's role in launching her career and honored him after his death. She expressed compassion for Gregg Allman despite the difficulties of their marriage. She remembered Gene Simmons with affection. She recalled Tom Cruise as charming and fun. Each relationship left its own mark. But Val Kilmer occupied a different place. He wasn't simply a former boyfriend. He became a lifelong friend. Someone she trusted. Someone she admired. Someone whose presence continued long after romance had ended. She welcomed him into her home during one of the hardest periods of his life, continued praising him publicly, and maintained a friendship that survived changing careers, changing relationships, and the passing of time. Those are the facts. The deeper emotions behind them belong to Cher alone. Perhaps that's why this story continues to resonate. It reminds us that love isn't always measured by marriage certificates or how many years 2 people spend together. Sometimes the people who shape us most are those who remain part of our lives in unexpected ways. Sometimes a relationship doesn't fail. It simply changes form. Looking back across Cher's extraordinary journey, it's remarkable how many chapters she survived. She overcame childhood poverty. She transformed herself into one of the most successful entertainers in history. She endured heartbreak, divorce, public scrutiny, professional reinvention, and personal loss. Through it all, she never lost her sense of humor or her willingness to speak honestly about the complexities of love. Her story also challenges a common belief that every great romance must end with happily ever after. Real life is rarely that simple. Some loves become marriages. Some become memories. and some become lifelong friendships that quietly outlast everything else. Perhaps that is why Val Kilmer's place in Cher's life feels so unique. Not because the public knows every detail, not because she made dramatic declarations, but because their bond endured when there was no reason for it to endure except genuine care. In the end, Cher's life reminds us that the people we never truly let go are not always the ones we spend forever with. They are often the ones who leave behind a lasting imprint, through kindness, understanding, shared laughter, and unwavering respect. Years pass. Careers rise and fall. Fame fades. But some connections remain untouched by time. And maybe that is the quiet truth at the heart of Cher's story, that love does not always ask to be remembered loudly. Sometimes, it lives on in loyalty, gratitude, and the simple decision to keep caring for someone long after the romance has ended.